When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. What is your advice to those EP agents that need balance? Let's say they got a couple kids, and let's say they have a corporate job, and they're just really they have the fantasy in their head about being a Jack Ryan in the U.S. being an EP agent, but they have a nice gig, a full-time job with benefits, and they really want to. They're bored out of their mind. The job they have, it just does not satisfy them anymore. They want to scratch that itch, but they got 3 kids, and they want to break away and jump in the EP industry, which. I had Aaron Mullen on the other day, and he goes, there's no job security in the EP industry. I'm like, for sure. The audience needs to hear that. And everybody has this allure that it's a Jack Ryan or Jason Bourne thing that you can travel the world with this principle. But with the recession coming, what is your advice as far as that guy, that family man or wife of a husband or a partnership to have balance and have, mental health? And any thoughts on that, an opinion on that?
Yeah, so if we go straight to it, the executive protection industry is a contractor-based industry.
Yep.
And that's, you're an at-will employee. Mm-hmm. And the way I spoke to my teams in the past, and that's probably the easiest way for me to give you my opinion on this, is that, again, expand yourself. Mm-hmm. You're a contractor, but if you're a contractor known for just doing one thing, that's the amount of contracts you're going to get. Yep. If you're a contractor that's agile and you know how to be a detail leader, you know how to be obviously the executive protection side, threat assessment, you know how to do security risk assessments. You've just broadened yourself into a number of different types of contracts versus just one small portion of the industry. If you've got a full-time job I'm the worst to ask that because I moved my family overseas and I was lucky because I have a wife and family that understood the dynamics of the industry I was in when we went overseas. However, you've got to balance yourself. If you are going to make that jump, you need to have as many of those skill sets to make yourself more marketable and ability to get on more than one type of operation. Mm-hmm. You may do an executive protection operation today, but you have a low profile skill. Well, now you're doing protective intelligence the next day, or another job comes up and you're a security risk assessor. So you've got to make yourself a little bit more marketable when you're going to make that jump. And contractors will tell you, it's feast or famine.
It is.
And sometimes
try running a company.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, and that's the mentality, is that there's a lot of little things that you miss out on. And look, some guys and gals, they want that. They're confident enough in themselves that they feel that they're going to meet that expectation. But my advice would be is make yourself as marketable as possible by adding more skill sets inside the industry and outside the industry. There's a business aspect to executive protection that people don't realize. And if you can make yourself a manager, program manager, project manager skill set, it's still holding your executive protection skill set. That makes you a lot more marketable to, business owners like yourself or myself than just grabbing a guy that's, he's the right rear seat guy. Again, nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But when you're a contractor, you have to have more than one skill set.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, Rick. When I had Craig Grettinger, he was former president of GS3. He passed away not too long ago, unexpectedly. But his advice was, like you said, find a skill set. He said, if you're going to talk the language of the C-suite in these corporations, you got to learn PowerPoint, you got to learn how to write, and you got to learn how to do presentations. And the stuff on social media, going to the gun range is fun, and shooting bullets is fun. But if that's all you know, and then they want to give a risk assessment, threat assessment, you don't even know how to write, you're going to be in that position for many, many years until you push yourself to grow. Or like Rick said just now, pick up a new skill set, writing, really get good at PowerPoint, like what Craig told me. Because, his clients, they want to see a PowerPoint. Or I saw a post on LinkedIn, what's the most valuable skill set you can get right now? EMT. Instead of spending a master's degree in criminology like what I have, it may be smart to go get a paramedic EMT license. That might be more a value add to that corporate client that may want to have you around in case someone gets hurt, someone gets stabbed, or someone has a medical emergency that doesn't need a gun. What's your thoughts on that? Just that expanding horizon for corporate demands.
That's it. You make my point very well there. So, you start learning the medical side. You've learned a good skill there, but if you look at another way, you've now trained yourself to look at how to prevent some things that may happen as well. So if you're only the hallway guy, the driver, and the shooter, if you will, the EMT-trained guy looks at things a little bit differently. He also looks at the same things you do, but he's adding a skill and a broad way to look at those. If you become a security risk assessor, same thing. You still have the basic EP skills, if you will, and you may have medical skills. Now you have assessment skills. You're looking at things completely different, and you're assessing things much faster because of that experience. I spent a lot of time in the last years because of the corporate side of the house at training our teams to understand project management. Well, how does that help you in executive protection? Well, every operation is cost, schedule, and delivery. You may just be on the delivery side, but once you learn that it costs something and it's scheduled for a certain payment type, now you've expanded your knowledge, not just in the EP world, the executive protection world, but also in the business world or the program management world. And that can be applied across the board. Your example of having a EMT or a medical skill, it's not just applied to executive protection. It could be applied to other things as well, such as HSSE, the health, safety, security, and environment. That's still within the security realm, and it's still related to executive protection. But now you've expanded your sellability, if you will. Is that even a word, sellability?
He said that was good to me. Works for me. Well, the audience gets it. We're good. Well, I think
that's really what you want to do.
Yeah. Customer service, people skills. I think what I've seen in my experience, soft skills and customer service is so lacking on the state side. Because I see people relying too much on that concealed carry permit. They got it. Oh, I'm a retired or former military. I'm good. The clients are getting pickier and pickier as we go. And sometimes, we have to think about this, guys and gals listening to the podcast. I'd say this all the time and beating the dead horse, but some company cultures do not allow gun on their property for liability insurance reasons. So now what? You've been spending all these dollars at these EP courses on the weekends and you got 25 certificates. Does the client really care? Because you have to remember the client's one that signs the check. And I think our culture in America has been pushing that really, really too hard on EP courses, being Jason Bourne on the weekend. Nothing wrong with shooting, having fun with the brothers and the sisters and shooting a few rounds down the range. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. I'm a Marine. But it's what the corporate culture wants right now. It's what their expectations are. And if they're cutting budgets right now on a corporate level, they're going to go, do I really need that? Probably not. They're going to save as much money as they can for their bottom line and for the quarterly reports.
You mentioned this earlier. So one of the best courses, in my opinion, I took for my growth was Shipley Contracting course. And the Shipley Contracting course teaches you about how contracts are put together, how each section is defined, and also the Defense Acquisition University has a free contracts course as well. And that contracts course teaches you how DOD, DOE, and State Department contracts are put together. And being able to understand that from an operations standpoint was one of the best courses I've ever taken in my life from a career path and growth standpoint. Even though for big contracting teams, I'm still what they call the Section E guy, the subject matter expert, but at least I knew how the whole contract was put together. So if we were bidding on something, I understood how the contract was going to be put together, generally understood how it was going to be costed and priced, and generally understood my part, which was the subject matter expert part, and how that placed itself into a larger contract. And so my skill set grew based on these courses that did they or didn't they have anything to do with executive protection or critical infrastructure? Well, operationally, they didn't, but winning the contracts, they did, because I became not just an operator, now became a subject matter expert for safety, security, for the contract teams. And so that expanded my skill set and what did we say earlier? Sellable skills to a larger group.
Yeah, I'm a licensed. I'm able to bid because I got that license, whatever that is. That I forget what it is. What's this term? I'm drawing a blank, but I'm able to bid on government contracts. I applied for that. They gave it to me, but we realized after time they're not easy to get.
No.
It's a big game, and then I find out later. The government takes like a couple months just to pay an invoice.
Sure. And you got to plan all that in.
And then if you don't have, $100,000 in your bank account to float payroll for a couple months to wait till you get paid, it's a tough way to go.
Well, what you just described too is again, you talked about the new people in executive protection. They may not understand that whole back system is supporting that operation. And I think that's where, in my opinion, those guys should expand themselves into that program management, project management, so they understand the whole concept of the contract, not just the operational point.
Right. I think there's a lot of companies out there biting down more than they can chew because they just want to be a company. And it's like, then they don't know what they're doing. They don't have the right people surrounding them to run a business, and they just get it in over their heads.
Well, that's funny because that's and you knew when because you're one of the first people I called when I came back to the States last month that, that's I've gotten a lot of these calls in the last month since I've been home as guys that are very successful. They've started their own company and they're still struggling a little bit on, okay, well, where do we go from here? Or why weren't we successful at this contract? And so I tell you, I've enjoyed spending a lot of time with guys in the industry, business owners, and some big companies too, and helping them kind of decide where they're going to go next. Some of them have been very successful at what they're doing. They just don't believe they're successful, and understanding what it takes to get to whatever the next level is. Are you a level 1 UN contract bidder, or are you a domestic executive protection, chasing executive protection contracts? Or are you doing multiple contracts at once? And that's it's a different part of the industry. A lot of people don't like to talk about because they want to be the sunglasses and earpiece guy.
Give us some age and experience. You'll want to be behind the office sooner than later. And the pay keeps on going down and down and down and down. And inflation goes up and up. And where does it wash out? But to your point, Rick, I saw a stat somewhere that security industry is like a $45 billion industry in the U.S. alone, just security.
Yeah, sure.
I'm like, that's a lot. That's a lot of money being spent in security.
Well, and that number probably doesn't include the aviation security industry as well.
Good point.
Even though that's part of the security industry, but the aviation security industry by itself is a huge, huge industry, which bases itself in threat assessment, risk assessment. The maritime security industry. There's another one that, it doesn't base itself in operation. It bases itself on security risk assessment, threat assessment, and ensuring you have a prediction model versus waiting for a reaction type model.
Yeah. Then also, and just dawned on me, the high net worth family office security. And, those more billionaires being created every year with all the different economies going around. You had the Bitcoin, crypto, wealth that was just created. Some of them just lost everything. And so that's a whole different industry compared to the EP industry of the corporate America. There's so many different layers and so many different organizations out there.
See, you just brought up a thought that might be interesting for your listeners as well. And that's, understanding how executive protection fits into corporate security. Mm-hmm. Executive protection really is only one skill set or one avenue of what the entire corporate security structure is. So you mentioned that, as a former chief security officer. So, our program spanned, a large number of items. We owned aviation companies, we owned maritime companies, logistical, trucking companies, warehousing. And so that's corporate security. Mm-hmm. And executive protection was only a small part of that.
Right.
And so I want to use that as an example is, sure, you may be in executive protection today, but as you expand your knowledge in other areas, it makes you valuable to aviation security, maritime security, the trucking and logistics security, because now you understand a program mentality versus a specific project mentality.
Yeah, because now we got the backlog of supply chain from China, pharmaceuticals, the chemicals that go into that coming from China, and you got everybody sitting on the boats because all the truckers are protesting because of gas prices in the ports. And I mean, I was in the Bay Area not too long ago. I counted 25 ships out there in the bay, at least just floating out there waiting to be docked. And, if we have another pandemic, who's to say we don't get shut down again? Because that thing's mutating. So supply chain security, it's like, it's just so many different industries that are affected by just one little thing, one little virus that, shut the whole world down.
Well, and that returns us to the beginning, right? The trying to predict in tabletop scenarios that no one's thought about before. That's what's really going to protect you. Yeah. It's not the reactive skills that everyone loves so much. It's sitting around trying to figure out new ways. And look, we're still talking about reactive skills, right? Well,
yeah.
Well, part of the industry is, okay, you've had an issue. Let's recover. How do you help your business recover from an issue they just had? That's a skill set within itself, and a trainable skill set within itself. So I think that's something that your listeners should look at as well. As you've gone through the preventative, you've had a reaction. All right, how do we help the business get back to operating safely and functionally?
Wow, we could write a book on all this. For the audience listening, we got Ric. I'll let you pronounce your last name.
Peregrino, yeah.
Peregrino. He is on LinkedIn. And please follow us, subscribe. This will be released probably in about a week or so. We'll be doing 2 podcast releases a week now. We're bumping it up. And we appreciate everybody's support of the show. I think we're pushing, we just hit over almost 15,600 downloads. And so we're cruising right along. But the goal of the show is just to add value to business owners, people in the entertainment world, people in the business world. We have the top accountant in the world or the U.S. coming on in a few weeks. I'm not going to say his name yet, keep it a secret, but he does accounting for large corporate firms. So we have that coming on. So please subscribe on Instagram and follow us on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast platforms out there. We had a great talk with Ric today, and he's a wealth of knowledge. He's Chief Security Officer of, is it Frontier out there?
Yeah, so Chief Security Officer, Frontier Services Group. I'll be transitioning now back to my personal company here in the U.S., and we focus on the strategy for companies that are operating in the Middle East and Africa. So I'll be in Dubai part of the year and here in Texas part of the year. So as I transition from Frontier Services Group, which I'll still advise for and help, I'll be focusing on, again, that mentorship and strategy for companies going overseas.
Where's the biggest market for security right now? Is it Africa? I hear Africa a lot lately on just industrialization.
I tell you honestly, it depends on what your point is going to be. Is it going to be financially? Is it going to be operation wise? As you pointed out earlier, they'll take Iraq as an example. The pay and the contracts in Iraq originally were huge contracts,
right?
And then those contracts dove from a large aspect to very minimal money. Which you see a lot of growth right now. You do see Africa as a growth continent, specifically in areas you wouldn't expect. Somalia is starting to grow. I'll tell you one of my favorite countries, and I just love the people there. That those outside of Africa think is crazy. Is I just love Nigeria. I love the people of Nigeria and what they've done in the last 10 years and the growth of their nation as well, as they struggle with internal terrorism and international terrorism as well. They've really grown the economy of Nigeria. I think you saw recently Afghanistan is starting to sell mining rights and oil and gas rights. So it's hard to tell, anywhere in the world where the main growth is. It just depends on what type of growth you're looking at.
Yeah, I just
Dubai.
Heard that. I think I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was interviewing somebody that was going deep dive. I think he was a Navy SEAL guy. He goes, "Oh yeah, they're leasing all their stuff to China right now, and we pulled out. And did we do any of that? No, we didn't get nothing. We got Zippo out of them." And now China's making a move, which is smart business, oil and gas. I didn't even know they had oil and gas over there.
Yeah, so there's been some interesting articles in the last couple days, after China signed its deal with the Taliban for its oil and gas rights. I mean, Afghanistan's a mineral rich country, and the people are great there as well. I know it sounds weird for someone to say that, but
right.
Just the average guy and family on the ground. I always loved being in Afghanistan. I always felt, you just have people just trying to make a living and take care of their family. But I would suspect that you'll see Afghanistan come back to the front commercially eventually.
Wow.
But there's going to be some serious challenges there.
You think there may see some war with the Taliban and the Chinese? You think the Taliban will start getting that money and start spending it on criminal activity towards what they believe in their value system? Or what do you think on that?
It's hard to tell. Obviously, a couple of days ago, you had an issue between Pakistan and Afghanistan again. That border is porous as well. So from a contract and company standpoint, I mean, Africa has always been a bit of a hard nut for American companies to understand, because it's just a different. Have so many different cultures on the continent, from the East Coast in Kenya to the West Coast in Nigeria to Spanish speaking, Mozambique. It's just for American businesses to operate there. It definitely takes a cultural mindset to be successful and understanding. Otherwise, you can find your money being you wonder where all your money went at the end of the year. And funny enough, that's where I'll be transitioning to that strategy for groups like that. And because of our, operating in Africa since 96, 94.
Sure. China's smart. Like you said, they play the long game. For their own economy, they want to take care of their people. I get it. So why not work out a deal with the Taliban and get some minerals, and those minerals that we need for electric cars, cobalt, and then for our cell phone. We need those minerals for transmitters and all that stuff. And we know the U.S. doesn't have that much minerals. We have gas, but got to go where the minerals are found at. So it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, so that was one of the big things that I learned over the years is you better understand the culture you're dealing with, because their business mindset's completely different than ours in America. We like to get things done quickly, efficiently, and we just go at it really hard. In some cultures, that's actually frowned upon. It's very difficult to do business with cultures like that. So, if you have if you have a country that's thinking in 50, 100-year timeframes versus the board of directors somewhere that's thinking in profit for next year, that's a tough mentality to break and a hard business environment to win in.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's been the big talk lately in the news cycles is the Chinese deal with Afghanistan and the Taliban and all that. And I think a lot of Americans are just upset, like, why didn't we do that? Well, we think short term. We go in there, do our thing, and leave, pull out. And China's like, okay, wait for the U.S. to leave. All right, we'll work on a partnership. I mean, they get Chevron, gas, oil. They have all kinds of business deals around the globe with many different countries.
Also, I think that, we spoke about this when you discussed the border here in the U.S. is, we need to understand what success looks like. And when you lose the vision of what success is supposed to look like, you end up being in a place for 20 years or 18 years or whatever it was.
Right.
It's you got to have someone that's constantly reevaluating what success is. In a fire team, in a Ranger unit, or the U.S. Marine Corps unit, success is just surviving the day. Mm-hmm. Where you need someone at the strategy level going, success is we're able to get this town back to functioning normal, or there aren't terrorist camps being built here anymore. Whatever that is, mm-hmm. it has to be looked at continuously and communicated to the teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We just kind of lost our focus, and I think the pandemic and the COVID just really put everybody to sleep for a little while. Everybody's staying in their bubble. Now the whole world is opening up again, and everybody's like traveling again, moving around.
I think you're going to find it's going to be more challenging as, go back to executive protection world. It's going to be more challenging for executive protection teams because of rules and regulations. It's not going to be understood clearly going into foreign countries where, and again, my teams, we already operate overseas. And you asked me this earlier today, and it's, U.S. domestic executive protection compared to overseas protection. Especially in high-risk environments. But, the mentality is a bit different because what you consider or what one group may consider high-risk protection, we do it every day. I mean, it's not considered high-risk protection to us. It's just a normal day of business.
Yeah.
And so that's where you need that bridge to help the two groups understand each other.
Yeah, and I think Americans think one way about EP. It's just domestic, corporate, not really that high threat. It's just more of an insurance policy. I think corporations have it. And like you say, go overseas, and it's just a wild, wild west out there. And Americans think, oh, it's the way we do it here in the States. Go to Afghanistan. Oh, shoot. Go to the Philippines. Oh, crap. Go to Africa. Oh, my God. And they just it's a shock to the culture, what they're used to.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you just mentioned a few places where a little bit of cultural understanding will save a lot of grief, if you will, when it comes to close protection teams and executive protection teams.
Right. Well, I think we're wrapping up this show, folks. We got a lot of information, content from Ric, our subject matter expert, chief security officer over at Frontier. He's been around the globe. He's worked with Eric Prince. He's got a lot of experiences, former Marine, so don't hold that against him. I'm sure he uses PowerPoint and not a crown. We're just having fun. But any parting words, Ric, for the audience? Any words of wisdom going into 2023?
Yeah, look. First, I appreciate you having me on, and any subjects that your viewers and listeners come up with, I'm happy to come back and discuss with you. I think as we go into 2023, I think corporate security teams, executive protection teams, they need to prepare themselves for some quick changing environments. One thing for sure in 2023 is that the environments that we're operating in now are not going to be the same operating environment a month from now. And so the better contact and communication you can have locally into the operating environments you go into, whatever it is, are going to save you a lot of grief going forward. Instead of trying to deploy big, huge 6, 7, 8-man teams from, England to Nigeria or America to Dubai, look for and gain a local partner that's vetted and try to use that expertise. And I guarantee your clients will see a different success level because you're allowing them to do what they need to do and you're still keeping them safe. So thanks again, Mark. I really appreciate it.
You bet, my friend. It's a pleasure having you. We connected to the Close Protection Conference, so shout out to Chuck Randolph and the IPSB board over there for what they do. You've helped many of us meet, connect, and just inspire and give hope to the industry itself. And so with that said, folks, thanks for tuning in. And please follow us on all the social platforms, on Apple Podcasts. And we'd love to we're going to be sharing this content here on all the social media platforms. So stay tuned for the next episode. And thanks for tuning in. This is Mark with the Fearless Mindset. We'll see you in the next episode.